Welcome to the Woman's Connection. I'm Barrie-Louise Switzen, your moderator. The Woman's Connection is a program about events shaping women's lives and helping one gain authentic power on a personal or professional level. So won't you stay tuned? Welcome. Politics. It's a word we're all familiar with. But how ingrained is politics in the food we eat? And with me is Marion Nestle, and I would like to welcome Marion. Marion, thank you for joining me.
Hi, nice to be here.
You are professor and chairwoman of the Department of Nutrition and Food Studies at NYU. What prompted you to write your book, Food Politics?
Well, I was working for the federal government in 1986, and I was going to be the editor of the Surgeon General's Report on Nutrition and Health, which came out in 1988. And on my first day on the job, I was told no matter what the research showed about diet and chronic disease prevention, the report would not say eat less meat, eat less sugar, or eat less of any other American agricultural product, because no government agency could ever say eat less of anything.
You're kidding.
I'm not kidding.
Oh my God.
So that was day one on the job. And of course they were absolutely right, because if the reports had said eat less meat, the National Cattlemen's Association would have complained to Congress, and Congress would have complained to the agencies, and the report never would have come out. So instead, we used euphemisms. We said choose a diet that contains lean meat. But we certainly didn't say eat less, even though meat is a major source of saturated fat in American diets.
Because I know Europeans, when they come over here, they're amazed at our steaks that we serve and the portions of our food.
Oh, the portions are unbelievable, and they have increased in size exactly in parallel with the increase in rates of overweight and obesity in this country, which have just skyrocketed just within the last 10 to 15 years, exactly the same period of time in which portion sizes have been increasing.
So what does a consumer do? I mean, you are geared to eat more. That you watch television, you listen to the radio, you read the paper. It says, eat this, eat that, how many portions of this, fruits and vegetables and your meats and your dairy. But how do you know what's really good for you? Because, you know, you eat this large quantity, your stomach stretches.
Well, sure, but you can tell whether you're eating the right amount of food or not by whether you're gaining weight or not. If your dietary intake in calories exactly balances the amount of energy that you're expending in walking around or activity, your weight will stay stable. If you're gaining weight, you're eating too much. It's as simple as that. And the food industry is spending $30 billion a year to make sure that you're eating more, not less.
So if we listen to the government, the food industry, I should say, you have to take what they say with, like they say, with a grain of salt.
Yes. Yes. Well, I mean, you have to understand that the food industry, like any other industry in this country, is a business.
Right.
And it's doing exactly what any business is supposed to do in this day and age. It's merging and it's acquiring. It's getting bigger. And because food is so enormously overproduced in this country, we have enough calories available in our food supply to supply the food needs of every single man, woman, and the child twice over. What this means is that there's just far too much food around, and if you're a food company, your job is to either get people to eat your food instead of somebody else's, or else to eat more in general. Well, and they do it really well.
They certainly do. I like a lot of their commercials.
Yeah, their commercials are great. Well, and they should be, because they put $30 billion a year into making those commercials.
Wow. Now, the biotech companies are really going through all the genetics and developing new and improved products, whether it's the grain for the soybeans or the meat, the food that the animals eat. But that goes through the food chain, and it comes right back to us. What happens to us, and how can we stop that?
Well, we don't have any real biotechnologically produced foods on the market right now.
Okay.
All we have are ingredients like corn and soybeans that are in our packaged foods. And we have no way of knowing whether they're there, because they're not labeled as having genetically engineered ingredients in them. I don't think that they're necessarily harmful. I don't think there's much evidence for harm from them. In fact, there isn't any evidence for harm from them at the moment. But it's a question of consumer choice.
Okay.
And we don't have the choice because they're not labeled.
So with all this food labeling that went on in, I guess, the 90s, where it tells you your sodium, your protein, your cholesterol, your saturated fats, they don't include all these other ingredients, or it just gives the bare minimum?
Well, it doesn't tell you whether they're genetically engineered or not.
Oh, that's
whether
true,
you,
too. Okay.
Whether you care about that sort of thing or not is a separate question.
Oh, I
but
do.
if you do care about it, they're not labeled as such. And that's part of food politics, because the genetic engineering firms worked very hard to make sure that the Food and Drug Administration didn't set up any labeling rules, and they worked hand in glove with the Food and Drug Administration to make sure that they wouldn't be labeled, and they're still opposing labeling, even though every survey that's done of consumer preferences shows that the public would like to know whether the ingredients are genetically engineered or not, even if they're not harmful. They want to know that they're there. Just like they want to know whether foods are irradiated, whether foods are frozen, made from frozen concentrate, and those other kinds of processes that are on the food label.
Are they afraid, the big corporations, afraid that if we do find out, we're going to boycott them?
Well, of course they're afraid of that, and there's
Okay.
plenty of evidence that in Europe that's exactly what happened. But I think they had a chance in the early 1990s when the first genetically engineered foods were being produced. They had a chance to just put a label on it, and in fact, the Calgene tomato, which was the first product that was approved by the FDA, was supposed to have a label on it. You know, one of these, made with pride, the best that American technology can do. Unfortunately, the tomato never came to market, so that there was no opportunity to test whether the label would prevent people from buying it. I think it probably would have made some people not want to buy it, but if they had priced that tomato the way the tomato paste in Europe was priced, it would have flown off the shelves if they had undercut the price. We're very price conscious in this country.
We're a lot of conscious of a lot of things. I mean, a lot more people, I think, are going organic, as much as one can go organic. Because it's like, what exactly is organic? I mean, if you see two products next to each other that are identical, how do you know one's organic and one's not?
Well, because the producers of the organic food will tell you that it's organic. They'll say it's certified organic if they've met the Department of Agriculture's criteria for it. And if it isn't genetically engineered, wasn't grown in sewage sludge, and wasn't irradiated, and was grown without pesticides, then they can apply for and get this organic certification, and they charge more for it.
They certainly
And so
do.
the kinds of people who are interested in making sure that their food isn't grown with artificial fertilizers and pesticides and so forth will be paying more for the privilege of having cleaner food.
I know I'm a big label reader because my grandmother, she taught me how to read labels at a very young age. And so I'm very, very conscious of the labels, and it's like, if it's got anything that I think is a chemical, I basically don't buy it. But a lot of people don't care. Is this because people don't understand the labels, or they're just don't care?
Well, I think the labels are very hard to understand. I mean, we have nutrition students in our department, and we spend a lot of time trying to teach them how to read and interpret labels. They're not so simple. But I think people really don't care. A lot of people really don't care. They just want to eat. They're hungry. They want to eat. Here are these products. They're heavily advertised. They're pushed at them. They're available. They're extremely cheap. Because food is very cheap in this country. You may not think so, but in fact, we pay the least amount of least amount of money for food than anybody else in the world at this point.
And New York is the highest in the country.
Well, New York may be the highest in the country, but in general, Americans don't pay nearly as much for food as people in other countries do. And part of that is because of the enormous subsidies that the government puts in ways that we don't even see. The recent Farm Bill was only the latest example of the kinds of subsidies that are going to very large agricultural producers. And those subsidies end up making fast food and packaged foods very cheap compared to the fruits and vegetables that would probably be much healthier for us to be eating.
That's true. When you go to the grocery store and you compare it with a fast food hamburger, and the nutrition, if you read the label, the nutrition is not there versus the fruits and vegetables you can get. I mean, I think the Europeans are much more health conscious than the Americans are.
Well, they're much more food conscious, but they're closer to their food than we are. We have such a separation between urban and rural areas here that many people who've grown up in cities have never seen a farm. In Europe, the farms are closer. They're part of the scenery. You know, they're part of the culture of growing up is to visit farms and to be connected with agriculture in some way. You know, we think that food comes out of packages. We don't really realize what its origins are because it's all off in the Midwest someplace.
Things are changing as urban sprawl, suburban sprawl. Many years ago, working in a coalition to get something changed took a tremendous amount of effort, especially if you were working locally and trying to reach global. With the internet changing all of that, what do you see coming down the pike for changes?
Well, I think the internet is a great place to do organizing around food issues, and this was demonstrated absolutely by the Organic Standards Act. When the Department of Agriculture proposed to permit organic foods to be genetically engineered, irradiated, or grown with sewage sludge, internet organizing was so successful that 275,000 people filed letters of protest.
Wow.
Most of them about the genetic engineering issue. And the Department of Agriculture was forced to change the rule and forbid those 3 items so that organic foods aren't irradiated, grown with sewage sludge, or genetically engineered. So that was an example of how effective grassroots advertising and grassroots organizing can be when it's done on the internet. And of course it's reaching internet-savvy consumers who are among the wealthiest and most educated in the country.
Going back to portion sizes, what is the amount that's really healthy for you to eat for, let's say, a steak or some of the other produce that meat and produce that you would eat?
Well, the Department of Agriculture has defined serving sizes. These are, I can't even talk about them without laughing because they're so small in comparison to what people are actually eating. But a Department of Agriculture steak is 3 ounces, which is about the size of a deck of cards. So, you know, I mean, if somebody was served a 3-ounce steak in a restaurant, they would probably get very upset and never go back to that restaurant. But that's 1 meat serving. 1 grain serving is a slice of white bread or a teeny little mini bagel, one of those, you know, really small ones. And
Right.
yet a regular sized bagel is 6 grain servings. So when the Department of Agriculture's advice about nutrition says you should eat 6 to 11 grain servings a day, when you've had your bagel in the morning, you've done your grain servings for the day. So their idea of portions and our idea of what we're actually served are very different. And that, of course, has been portion creep because 10 or 15 years ago, portions were much smaller. And it's just within this period of time that they've gotten bigger and bigger and bigger and have gotten giant sized, and now they're supersized.
And people are becoming supersized.
And people are becoming supersized. What a coincidence.
I always thought it was just eating wrong. I guess this is serving sizes have a big play in the whole thing too.
Well, it's if you want to lose weight, the easiest way to do it is just not eat so much. I mean, I think the best dietary advice is eat less, move more, eat more fruits and vegetables, and don't smoke. That takes care of it.
Well, what about wine? Let's talk about wine.
By all means.
Yes, I wish I had a bottle to share with you. There's been so much controversy about wine, the antioxidants in it for health reasons. Some say it's good for you, some say it's bad for you. How do you feel about it?
Well, it depends on whether you drink or not. If you like wine, it seems to me it's fine in moderation. You know, nutritionists are always saying, eat and drink in moderation. There's very, very good evidence now that small amounts of alcohol in the diet reduce risk for heart disease. and that it's in some ways healthier to have a small amount of alcohol than not to have any alcohol at all if you're worried about heart disease. On the other hand, there are lots of ways to reduce heart disease risk. So if you don't drink, there's no reason to start. And if you do drink, it should be moderate and not too much.
Now, in your book, you talk about alcohol equals breast cancer.
Oh, no, not
No?
exactly.
Okay.
No. There's one of the reasons why the recommendations are not for everybody to start drinking is because that there's evidence that women who drink alcohol have a higher risk for breast cancer than women who don't. It's a small higher risk, but it's still a higher risk. And that's why the recommendation for women is no more than 1 glass of wine a day on average in order to keep the risk of breast cancer as low as possible.
Oh, all right. But it helps you, it still helps the heart.
It reduces the risk for heart disease, but you don't want to raise your risk for breast cancer and reduce your risk for heart
No.
disease because there are lots of other ways in which you can reduce your risk for heart disease. You can eat less fat, you can exercise, you can stop smoking. There are lots of ways.
Now, besides the produce, vegetables and fruits in your diet, which is better for you, or which should you increase or decrease, milk or dairy?
I'm not sure I exactly understand the question.
Let me do a back.
If you're going to eat dairy products, eat low-fat ones.
Okay, wait a minute. Which do we need more of, dairy or meat, in our diets?
Oh, I don't think we need either one.
Oh, okay.
I mean, there are there's no one food that is essential in human diets. It's possible to get all of the nutrients you need and protect your health by putting together a combination of foods, and certainly strict vegetarians and vegans are very healthy.
Wait a minute. What's the difference between a vegan and a vegetarian?
A vegetarian is sometimes vegetarians vary. They don't eat red meat. That's the one thing in common.
Okay.
But some eat fish and some eat dairy products and some eat eggs and some don't. A vegan is someone who doesn't eat any animal products at all. Both of those can be quite healthy if the calories are balanced and if there's variety in the diet and if a couple of vitamins are taken care of. Vitamin B12 is found only in animal products, so it's important for vegans to make sure they have a good source of vitamin B12. But other than that, it's just fine. If people do eat meat and dairy products, they don't have to worry about vitamin B12.
Oh, okay, because I like an occasion steak. That's pretty good. What's the FDA's position on vitamins?
Well, it's a complicated one with a long history. The FDA has always said that it's a science-based agency. And by that it means that if a product is going to say that it has an effect on health, that product has to produce some evidence, or the maker of that product has to produce some evidence that the product really works and really does have that effect on health and that it's safe and it won't cause any harm. And the makers of vitamin supplements for years and years and years have said that vitamins and other kinds of supplements don't have to be held to that standard. So that if a supplement manufacturer says, my product prevents heart disease, they don't need to prove that that product
Isn't that a little
prevents-
arrogant?
Well, arrogant, it's good marketing. They don't have to prove it. And the FDA has tried to make them prove it, but they have resisted. They organized a tremendous grassroots campaign of supplement takers to say that supplements shouldn't be held to the same kinds of rules as drugs are held to. And the FDA has had to agree to that because Congress passed a law in 1994 that said that vitamin and mineral and herbal supplements in general, did not have to be held to the same standard as drugs or food additives for that matter. So that it's possible for the makers of supplements to make claims for the health benefits of their products without proving that the product is either safe or beneficial.
So how do we know? Yes.
Let the buyer beware.
I was just going to ask you, how do you know what is good for you? If everybody's claiming, oh, this is the miracle supplement to take care of your health, how do you know? How do you really know?
Well, you don't know scientifically.
Okay.
But a lot of people feel that they know because they take supplements and feel better. And whether that's because of something that the supplement does itself, or whether it's because people feel better when they take things in general, it's hard to decide one way or the other, but it may not matter.
Well, it almost could be like a placebo,
It could.
where, okay, the psychological effect is making me feel better.
It could. And for a lot of supplements, the more research you do, the less you find out about what they're capable of doing. Sometimes it's better not to do the research.
So the internet has been a boon or a bust to a lot of this.
Well, depending on what you read on the internet, some sites are more scientifically sound than others.
I know in your book you're very scientific, and I noticed that you document just about every word you've said in there.
Well, I knew that the book would be very controversial, and that the food manufacturers would be very concerned about what I said in it. And so I tried as much as I could to make sure that there was documentation for what I was saying. But the documentation's all in the back, so that if people don't want to bother with it, they don't have to.
No, it's very interesting reading. I mean, going forward, what do you see happening to the food and politics situation?
Well, I think right now we're in an era where the politics favors corporations and allows corporations to say whatever they want about their products and to market them in any way they want to, even market them to young children. And increasingly, marketers are looking at 7- and 8-year-olds as prime targets for selling junk foods, for example. I see that as that continues, there will be more and more pressure on the government to step in and try to get a little bit more balance into that. I mean, food companies are food companies. We need them. They make foods. They've produced a wonderful food supply for us. But we need them to back off a little bit on some of the unethical things that they're doing and to be a little bit more consumer friendly in what they're doing. And I think that's going to happen. Certainly there's been a lot of consumer pressure about what's going on in schools these days when it comes to food marketing. As these soft drink companies have come into schools with these exclusive contracts, a lot of parents are fighting back.
I think that's great, because I look at these children who are drinking so much soda, and it's awesome. We always knew at home when we were having company, Mother stocked the refrigerator with soda, and that was the signal, but we never had soda.
Well, it's got calories and water and sugars and sweeteners and nothing else. And we know that kids who drink soda take in more calories, are fatter, and have worse diets than kids who don't. So if you're going to start to try to do something about a kid's diet, it's a really great place to start.
Well, not to knock the soda industry, because I do occasionally drink a soda, but is it true or not true that the caffeine in sodas causes, not causes, but is detrimental to your bones?
Oh, I don't think it's the caffeine. I think it's other components of soda.
Okay.
It's the fact that they contain phosphates, and they're also consumed with diets that are high in sodium and protein usually. And it's the combination of factors that causes bones to be weakened. Here again, if you look at bone health, there are studies that show that women who drink a lot of soft drinks have weaker bones than people who don't. Whether that's because of the soft drinks or because of other things in the diet, it's hard to sort out.
What would you like to see happen?
Well, I'd like to see a dietary change across the population where people start saying no to the marketing that's going on and realize how much food marketing is influencing what they're eating. And then,
Can't they just turn off the television and...
Oh no, because it's so ubiquitous. It's
Okay.
just everywhere around us. It's so around us that we don't even notice it. I'd like to see people start doing some critical examination of food marketing and pay attention to the ways in which food is being thrown at them, not just from advertisements, but from t-shirts and toys and books and product placements in movies, and all the very clever ways, and certainly what's going on in schools, all the ways in which food marketers have figured out how to get the message across without anybody even noticing. I mean, when did it become normal for people to drink soft drinks all day long? I don't know when that happened. But it's great for the soft drink industry.
Very true.
So, and then if people are worried about their weight, just eat less. Eat less, move more. Eat more fruits and vegetables. That'll do it.
Are you a firm believer in the Mediterranean diet?
I certainly am. I think the Mediterranean diet, in proportion and not in huge quantities, is a very good one, and it's a place where people can have more fat in their diet if it's in the form of olive oil and other monounsaturated oils like nuts and avocados.
Oh,
these
I
are
love
all
avocados.
these are all really good things, but always in not too great quantities.
Marion, thank you so much for joining me.
It was a pleasure.
It has been so interesting about food and politics. And I hope you've learned something about food and politics, and write your congressman or the FDA the next time you're unhappy about something going on. Bye now.